I never expected a charity gala to change my life, but that's exactly what happened on the night my fiance's father collapsed. I was in the middle of analyzing gene sequences at my lab when Jasper's call came through. Marley, you need to come to St. Michael's Hospital right now. His voice cracked. Dad just. He just went down during his speech. They're saying it might be his heart. I'm Marley Finch, and until that moment, my biggest concern had been finishing my research paper on genetic markers before the deadline. Now, as I rushed through the hospital's automatic doors 20 minutes later, that seemed laughably unimportant. The emergency room waiting area was a scene of controlled chaos. Jasper's mother, Lorraine, paced in her designer gown, her perfectly manicured fingers clutching her phone. She barely acknowledged my presence with a slight nod. Typical. Jasper stood when he saw me, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. They're running tests, he said, pulling me into a tight hug. God, Marley, he just... 1 minute he was thanking everyone for supporting the foundation, and the next. He's in good hands, I assured him, though my stomach churned at the sight of his pale face. I'd never seen Jasper this shaken before. A doctor emerged from the treatment area, her expression grave. Mrs. Caldwell, your husband's condition is critical. His kidneys are failing, and we've detected severe damage to his liver. Lorraine's hand flew to her throat. But how? Reggie's always been healthy. We're still running tests, but right now our primary concern is finding a compatible donor. Given the urgency, family members would be our best option. I'll do it, Jasper said immediately. Whatever he needs. The doctor nodded. We'll need to run compatibility tests. If you'll come with me. As Jasper followed the doctor, Lorraine finally turned her full attention to me. This is a family matter, she said, her voice low and clipped. Perhaps you should head home. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was my mom, Evelyn. Everything okay, honey? You left the apartment in such a rush. Reggie Caldwell's in the hospital, I said, moving away from Lorraine. It's pretty serious. There was a long pause. Oh, just that one syllable. But something in my mother's voice made me frown. Do they know what's wrong? Organ failure. They're testing Jasper now for compatibility. Another pause. Marley, maybe you should. Dr. Anderson to emergency stat. The overhead announcement cut through our conversation. I watched as medical staff rushed toward the treatment area. Mom, I have to go. I'll call you later. I hung up just as Jasper returned, looking confused. They're saying something's weird with my blood work. They need to run more tests. My research brain kicked in. What kind of weird? I don't know. Something about blood types not matching up right. He ran his hands through his hair. I can barely think straight. As a geneticist, that detail snagged my attention. Blood types follow clear inheritance patterns. It's basic genetics. But before I could ask more questions, alarms started blaring from Reggie's room. The next few hours passed in a blur of medical terms and worried conversations. By morning, Reggie was stable but critical. Jasper had fallen asleep in an uncomfortable chair, and Lorraine had retreated to make phone calls. I sat there, watching the sunrise through the window, when Felicity, Jasper's aunt, arrived. She took one look at the scene and went pale. How bad, she whispered. He needs a transplant, I said. They're having trouble finding a match. Felicity's eyes darted to Jasper's sleeping form, then back to me. No match yet. Something about her tone made me look at her more closely. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Is there something I should know? I asked quietly. She straightened her shoulders. No, of course not. I should go check on my sister. But as she walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just witnessed the tip of something much bigger. Between my mother's odd reaction, Jasper's blood work issues, and now Felicity's strange behavior, my scientific mind was starting to piece together a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. After 36 hours at the hospital, Jasper finally agreed to come home and rest. The drive back to our apartment was silent, heavy with unspoken worries. I kept thinking about those blood test results, but every time I opened my mouth to ask about them, I saw the exhaustion in Jasper's face and stopped myself. Our apartment felt different somehow. The engagement photos on the walls seemed to mock us with their carefree smiles. Jasper headed straight for the shower while I called my mom. I'm coming over, she said before I could protest. You both need a proper meal, and I've got leftover lasagna. 20 minutes later, my mother arrived with enough food to feed an army. She took one look at Jasper, freshly showered but still looking lost, and went into full nurse mode. "Sit," she commanded. "When was the last time you ate something that wasn't from a vending machine?" Jasper managed a weak smile. "I honestly can't remember, Evelyn." As my mother busied herself in the kitchen, I noticed how her hands shook slightly while handling the dishes. Something was off. Mom was usually rock solid in a crisis. It's what made her such a great nurse. "The doctors say Dad's stable for now," Jasper said, picking at his food. "But without a compatible donor." My mother dropped a fork. The clatter made us both jump. "Sorry," she muttered, but her face had gone pale. "Just tired. Long shift yesterday." Before I could question her reaction, Jasper's phone rang. It was Lorraine. "Yes, Mother," he said, his voice tightening. "No, I don't think. Yes, I understand, but..." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "Fine. We'll be there in an hour." "What's wrong?" I asked after he hung up. "Mother's organizing a family meeting at their house. Says we need to discuss arrangements while Dad's incapacitated." He looked at me apologetically. "She wants you there too." The Caldwell mansion always made me feel small, but today it felt suffocating. Lorraine had gathered the family in the formal living room, all crystal chandeliers and antique furniture that nobody actually sat on. Felicity was already there, perched on the edge of a Victorian settee like she might bolt at any moment. She barely met my eyes when we walked in. "Jasper, darling." Lorraine swooped in, air-kissing his cheeks. "And Marley." Her pause before my name spoke volumes. I heard voices from the study, Lorraine's lawyer, apparently, discussing power of attorney. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but paused in the hallway when I heard my name. "That girl is becoming a problem," Lorraine was saying. "A scientist? From that background?" "Really, Felicity, you know what Reggie would want for Jasper." "Lorraine, now isn't the time." "It's exactly the time. With Reggie incapacitated, we need to protect the family's interests. That includes making sure Jasper doesn't make any unfortunate decisions." My hands clenched into fists. I dealt with Lorraine's thinly veiled contempt for years, but this was different. This felt calculated. "There you are." Jasper's voice made me jump. He frowned at my expression. "Everything okay?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from the hospital lab. I'd called in a favor from a colleague to look at Jasper's blood work. "Results don't make sense," the text read. "Patient's blood type impossible given listed parents. Might want to double-check family history." My stomach dropped. I looked at Jasper, at his familiar features that I'd always thought came from Reggie. But now, "Marley." Jasper touched my arm. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired," I lied, pocketing my phone. "Maybe we should go home." "Not yet." Lorraine appeared in the hallway. "The lawyer needs to discuss the foundation's succession plans." "Jasper, come with me." "Marley, perhaps you'd be more comfortable waiting out here." As they disappeared into the study, I caught Felicity watching me. The guilt in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. Something was very wrong with the Caldwell family tree, and I was beginning to suspect it had roots in my own past. The scientist in me needed answers, but the woman who loved Jasper was terrified of what those answers might reveal. The lab results haunted me for days. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus at work, and definitely couldn't look Jasper in the eye without feeling like I was betraying him somehow. Finally, I called Tess and asked her to meet me at our usual coffee spot. "You look like hell," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. I pushed my laptop toward her. "Look at these blood type results. Tell me I'm not crazy." Tess, a medical researcher herself, studied the screen. Her eyebrows shot up. "This can't be right. If these are Jasper's results, and Reggie's his father." She trailed off, frowning. "Exactly. It's genetically impossible." "Holy shit." Tess leaned back. "Does Jasper know? How am I supposed to tell him?" "Hey honey, by the way, the man you're trying to save might not actually be your father." The barista brought our drinks, and I noticed my hands shaking as I reached for my cup. "There's more," I said quietly. "My mom's been acting weird ever since Reggie collapsed. And yesterday I found this." I pulled out an old photograph I discovered while searching through Mom's storage boxes. It showed a much younger version of her at what looked like a company party. She was standing next to Reggie Caldwell, and they were looking at each other in a way that made my stomach turn. "No way," Tess whispered. My phone buzzed. Another text from Lorraine about wedding planning. She'd been oddly insistent about moving up the date, claiming we should do it while Reggie was still well enough to attend. "She knows something," I said. "Lorraine's been pushing hard to either break us up or rush us to the altar." "Why?" "Maybe she's worried you'll figure it out." Tess took another look at the photo. "When was this taken?" 30 years ago. Mom was working as a nurse at Reggie's first store location. Just then my phone rang. It was Jasper. "You need to come to the hospital," he said, his voice tight. "Mother's trying to convince Dad to change his will while he's on medication. It's getting ugly." I arrived to find Lorraine and Felicity in a heated argument outside Reggie's room. Jasper stood between them, looking lost. "He's not thinking clearly," Lorraine was saying. "The medication is keeping him alive," Felicity shot back. "You can't use that as an excuse too." They fell silent when they saw me. Lorraine's eyes narrowed. "Family matters," she said pointedly. "I am family," I replied, surprising myself with my steadiness. "Or I will be soon." "Will you?" Lorraine's smile was razor sharp. "Are you sure about that?" "Mother," Jasper warned, but I was already moving past them into Reggie's room. He looked worse than before, pale against the hospital sheets. His eyes opened when I approached. "Marley," he said weakly, "I need to tell you." "Not now, darling," Lorraine interrupted, suddenly beside me. "You need your rest." But Reggie grabbed my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "Your mother," he started. "That's enough." Lorraine's voice cracked like a whip. Felicity stepped forward. "Lorraine, maybe it's time. Get out." Lorraine pointed at the door. "All of you out." As we filed into the hallway, I caught Felicity's arm. What was he trying to tell me about my mother? She pulled away, but not before I saw tears in her eyes. "Ask Evelyn about the summer of '93, she whispered. "Ask her about the company picnic." Back in the hallway, Jasper was staring at his phone. "The lab sent over more test results," he said. "They're saying..." He looked up at me, confusion clouding his features. "They're saying I can't be a donor because there's no genetic match." "How is that possible?" Behind him, I saw Lorraine's face go white. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew she'd been keeping this secret for 30 years. The truth was right there, waiting to destroy everything. And I was the one holding the match. I spent 3 days avoiding Jasper's calls while I tried to figure out what to do with the truth burning a hole in my pocket. The old photo of Mom and Reggie sat on my desk like a ticking bomb, while dozens of unanswered messages filled my phone. Finally, Jasper showed up at my lab. "You can't just disappear on me," he said, his voice tight with hurt. "Not with everything that's happening." I couldn't meet his eyes. Instead, I stared at the genetic analysis on my computer screen, the one that proved what I'd suspected since that day in the hospital. "Talk to me, Marley. What's going on?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Lorraine's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call, but seconds later, a text appeared. "We need to discuss what you think you know." "Why is my mother texting you?" Jasper asked, frowning at my phone. "Because she's trying to protect her lies," I muttered, then immediately regretted it when I saw his expression. "What lies?" The lab door opened, and Tess walked in, freezing when she saw us. "Oh, sorry, I didn't." "No, stay," I said quickly. Having her there made me braver somehow. "I need to show Jasper something anyway." My hands shook as I pulled up the blood type analysis. "The reason you can't be a donor for Reggie. It's not just a simple mismatch." "Marley," Tess warned, but I couldn't stop now. "These markers show a complete genetic impossibility. According to this data, Reggie can't be your biological father." The silence that followed was deafening. Jasper stared at the screen, then at me, his face draining of color. "That's impossible," he whispered. "There must be a mistake." I ran the tests 3 times. I reached for the old photograph. And then I found this. Jasper took the photo, his hands trembling slightly. "When was this?" "Summer of '93. 9 months before you were born." The lab door burst open. Lorraine stood there, breathing hard like she'd run all the way from the parking lot. "That's enough," she snapped. "Jasper, come with me." "Now, did you know?" Jasper's voice was barely audible. "All this time, did you know?" Lorraine's face hardened. This isn't the place. It's a simple question, Mother. Did you know? Everything I did was to protect you, she said, her composure cracking. To protect our family name. By lying to me my entire life? Jasper's laugh was hollow. Who is my real father? Lorraine's eyes darted to the photo in his hands, then to me. This is your fault, she hissed. You couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? Just like your mother, always destroying everything she touches. What does my mother have to do with this? I demanded, but something in Lorraine's expression made my blood run cold. Ask her about Thomas Bennett, she said, her voice dripping with venom. Ask her what really happened the night he disappeared. The name hit me like a physical blow. Thomas Bennett, I'd seen it before in old newspaper clippings I'd found while researching the Caldwell family history. He'd been Reggie's business partner until he vanished without a trace 30 years ago. Jasper looked between us, his world visibly crumbling. I need some air, he muttered, heading for the door. Jas, wait. I reached for him, but he pulled away. Don't, he said. Just don't. After he left, Lorraine turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You wanted the truth? Congratulations. Now we all get to live with it. She walked out, leaving me standing there with Tess, the weight of unspoken secrets threatening to suffocate me. Thomas Bennett, I said quietly. Why does that name feel important? Tess was already typing on her computer. Because according to this old article, he was last seen leaving a meeting with Reggie Caldwell and a nurse named Evelyn Finch. My mother. The night before she left town, pregnant with me. The truth wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. It was dangerous. I found my mother in her garden, methodically pulling weeds like her world wasn't about to implode. The newspaper clipping about Thomas Bennett felt heavy in my pocket. Who was he? I asked without preamble. Mom's hands stilled in the dirt. She didn't turn around. Who? Thomas Bennett. Reggie's missing business partner. The man who disappeared the night before you left town, pregnant with me. The trowel in her hand clattered to the ground. When she finally faced me, her expression was one I'd never seen before. Raw fear. Where did you hear that name? Lorraine Caldwell seemed pretty interested in what you might know about his disappearance. Mom stood slowly, brushing dirt from her knees. Come inside. In her kitchen, she pulled a dusty box from the top shelf of her pantry. Inside was a stack of letters, all addressed to Thomas Bennett. He was your father, she said quietly. And he was going to leave everything, his family, his share of the business, to be with us. Her hands trembled as she sorted through the letters. The night he disappeared, he was meeting with Reggie to sign over his part of the company. I was supposed to meet them afterward, but when I got there, she swallowed hard. There was blood in Reggie's office. Not much, but enough. My phone buzzed, another message from Jasper. We need to talk. About everything. Did Reggie kill him? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I don't know. Mom's eyes filled with tears. But Lorraine was there that night too. She saw me outside the office. The next day, she came to my apartment with an envelope full of cash and a warning. Leave town or she'd tell the police I was involved. So you ran. I ran to protect you. She grabbed my hand. Marley, you need to stop digging. These people, they're dangerous when they're cornered. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Felicity. Meet me at the hospital. There's something you need to see. I have to go, I said, standing. Marley, please. Did you ever think that maybe the truth would protect me better than lies? At the hospital, I found Felicity in Reggie's room. He was asleep, machines beeping steadily around him. Look at this, she said, handing me a folder. Inside were more blood test results, not Jasper's but Reggie's. These patterns, I muttered, scanning the data. They're similar too. To yours, Felicity finished. I had the lab run a comparison. Marley, Reggie isn't just Jasper's uncle. He's your father. The room spun. That's impossible. My father was Thomas Bennett. That's what Evelyn believed. But Reggie, he and your mother. It was before Thomas disappeared. A harsh laugh from the doorway made us both jump. Lorraine stood there, her perfect makeup unable to hide her fury. So now you know, she said. The great Reggie Caldwell, sleeping with his partner's girlfriend while playing the devoted family man. And you, she pointed at me, You're the living proof of his betrayal. Does Jasper know? I asked. Know what? That his fiancée is his cousin? That his whole life is built on lies. Lorraine's smile was cruel. Not yet. But imagine what it would do to him. You can't. Can't what? Tell the truth? Isn't that what you wanted? She stepped closer. Here's the deal. Walk away from Jasper, from all of this, or I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of family they're really part of. Behind her, Reggie's monitors started beeping faster. His eyes were open, watching us. Enough, he rasped. But the truth was already unraveling, spinning out of control. I looked at my father, not Thomas Bennett, but Reggie Caldwell, and saw 30 years of secrets threatening to destroy everyone I loved. The question wasn't whether to tell Jasper anymore. The question was, who would break his heart first? The hospital room felt smaller with each passing second as Reggie struggled to sit up in his bed. Lorraine moved to stop him, but he waved her away. Get out, he wheezed. Both of you. I need to speak with Marley alone. Lorraine's face twisted. You're not thinking clearly. Now. His voice carried the authority of a man who'd spent decades giving orders. After they left, silence stretched between us like a chasm. I looked at his monitors. Anywhere but his face. I should have told you years ago, he finally said. Which part? That you're my father? Or that you killed Thomas Bennett? His heart rate spiked on the monitor. Is that what Evelyn thinks? That I killed him? Did you? No. He closed his eyes. But I know who did. Before he could continue, Jasper appeared in the doorway. His face was ashen, his phone clutched in his hand. I just got the strangest call from Mother, he said. Something about DNA tests and family secrets. His eyes moved between us. What's going on? My throat closed up. Behind Jasper, I saw Lorraine smirking from the hallway. Son, Reggie started. Don't. Jasper's voice cracked. Just tell me the truth. All of it. Reggie's monitors began beeping faster. A nurse rushed in, checking his vitals. You need to leave, she said. His blood pressure's too high. Not until someone explains. The machines erupted in alarm. Reggie clutched his chest, gasping. Medical staff flooded the room, pushing us into the hallway. Code blue, someone shouted. Jasper grabbed my arm. What did you do? I didn't. First the blood tests, then Mother's call, now this? His fingers dug into my skin. What are you trying to prove? That everything you think you know is a lie. The words burst out before I could stop them. His grip loosened. What? Reggie isn't your father, Jazz. He's mine. The color drained from his face. Behind us, the medical team was still working on Reggie, their shouts echoing through the corridor. That's impossible, Jasper whispered. The genetic tests prove it. And there's more. Thomas Bennett. Stop. He backed away. Just stop. Jasper, please. We're cousins. His laugh was hollow. All this time. Were you investigating me? Using your science to what? Expose my family. I was trying to understand my own family. Well, congratulations. His voice was ice. You've destroyed both of them. From the hospital room came the long, steady tone of a flatline. Time of death, 9:47 p.m., someone announced. Jasper's face crumpled. He turned and ran down the hallway as doctors emerged from Reggie's room, shaking their heads. Lorraine appeared at my side. Are you happy now? She hissed. You've killed him, just like your mother killed Thomas. I spun to face her. What did you say? Oh, you didn't know that part? Her smile was venomous. Ask dear Evelyn about the syringe they found in Thomas's office. The one with her fingerprints on it. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Don't trust Lorraine. She's the one who killed Thomas. I have proof. But when I looked up, Lorraine was already walking away, her heels clicking on the hospital floor like a countdown. Behind me, they were covering Reggie's body. My father, the man who might have finally told me the truth about that night 30 years ago. I stood alone in the hallway, caught between my dead father and my fleeing almost husband, while 30 years of lies unraveled around me. Somewhere in this mess was the truth about Thomas Bennett's death, but finding it might cost me everything I had left. My phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I know what really happened that night. Meet me at the old factory. Come alone. The choice was simple: walk away and lose everything, or dive deeper and risk destroying what little remained of both families. I headed for my car. Some truths are worth burning for. The old factory loomed against the night sky, its broken windows like jagged teeth. I killed my car's headlights and checked my phone one last time. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Tess, and a single text from Jasper. Don't do anything stupid. Too late for that. A figure emerged from the shadows near the loading dock. Felicity, still wearing her hospital clothes. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. You know what happened to Thomas Bennett. She nodded toward the rusted door. Better show you. Inside, moonlight filtered through the holes in the roof, casting strange shadows across abandoned machinery. Felicity led me to an old office, pulling a weathered envelope from her purse. Lorraine didn't just kill Thomas, she said. She killed your father too. Reggie died of organ failure, after 30 years of slow poisoning. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. I found these in her safe. Receipts for something called thallium. She's been adding it to Reggie's tea for decades. Why? Because he was going to leave her for your mother. Another voice, Lorraine's, cut through the darkness. She stepped out from behind a column, holding something that glinted in the moonlight. A gun. Always the dramatic reveal. Felicity? Lorraine's laugh was brittle. Couldn't just let the past stay buried? Like you buried Thomas? I asked. Thomas was a mistake. He found out what I was planning for Reggie and threatened to expose me. She moved closer, the gun steady. But Reggie? That was art. Slow, untraceable, until you started digging. Footsteps echoed behind me. Jasper appeared, his face a mask of horror. Mother. Jasper. Lorraine's composure cracked. You weren't supposed to be here. I followed Marley. His voice was hollow. I don't know what I thought. But not this. Everything I did was for you, Lorraine insisted. To protect your inheritance, your future. By killing my father? His laugh was bitter. Which one? The man who raised me, or my real father? Thomas was weak, Lorraine spat. He would have ruined everything. Just like she's trying to do. The gun swung toward me. You want to know the truth, Jasper? Felicity pulled out another paper. Your real father was Thomas Bennett. And Lorraine killed him the night he was going to tell you. The gun wavered. Shut up. That's why she hates Marley so much, Felicity continued. Because Marley is living proof of what Reggie did, sleeping with Evelyn while Thomas was falling for Lorraine. Stop. Lorraine's finger tightened on the trigger. I saw it then. The same desperate need for control that had driven her to poison her husband, to kill Thomas, to manipulate everyone around her for decades. You can't shoot all of us, I said quietly. And you can't bury this truth. Watch me. She aimed at my heart. The gunshot was deafening. Lorraine screamed, the gun flying from her hand. Blood bloomed on her shoulder. My mother stepped from the shadows, holding a small revolver. 30 years ago, you made me run, she said. Not this time. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Jasper moved toward his mother, but stopped, his face conflicted. I called them, he said. When I followed Marley. I recorded everything. Lorraine lunged for her dropped gun. Another shot rang out, this time from a police officer entering through the back door. As they led Lorraine away in handcuffs, Jasper turned to me. We're not cousins. No. But we're still tangled in this mess. Yes. He looked at the factory's broken windows, at the moonlight painting shadows across 3 decades of secrets. I don't know if I can. I know, I said. Neither do I. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes it just shows you how trapped you really are. Behind us, evidence teams began documenting 30 years of carefully constructed lies. Ahead of us lay the wreckage of 2 families bound by blood, betrayal, and a truth that none of us had wanted to find. 6 months after Lorraine's arrest, I stood in front of Reggie's grave with a handful of white roses. The autumn wind scattered leaves across the fresh dirt of Thomas Bennett's newly discovered remains, finally laid to rest in the plot next door. Ready? Jasper's voice was soft behind me. I nodded, placing the roses on both graves. We hadn't spoken much since that night at the factory, both needing time to process the wreckage of our shared history. But yesterday, he'd called. They're reading the will today, he said now, hands in his pockets. You should be there. The lawyer's office felt too small for the weight of everything that had happened. Felicity sat quietly in the corner while my mother held my hand. The envelope the lawyer produced bore Reggie's signature, dated just hours before his death. To my children, he began, both the one I raised and the one I should have. I squeezed Mom's hand as the lawyer detailed Reggie's final wishes. The eco-friendly store chain would be split equally between Jasper and me. But it was the second envelope that changed everything. In the event of my death, the lawyer read, this evidence should be turned over to the authorities. Inside were documents proving Lorraine had been embezzling from the company for years, funneling money into offshore accounts. The final piece of revenge from a dying man. He knew, Jasper said quietly, about the poisoning. He was gathering evidence all along. After the reading, Jasper and I walked through the park where we'd had our first date. The autumn colors reminded me of that night, before we knew we were part of a tragedy 30 years in the making. I found my father's journals, Jasper said suddenly. Thomas Bennett's, I mean. He wrote about you, about hoping to be there when you were born. My throat tightened. What are we supposed to do with all this? Maybe it's not about doing anything. He stopped walking. Maybe it's about accepting that our parents were just people, making terrible decisions out of love and fear and jealousy. A text buzzed on my phone. News from the prosecutor. Lorraine had accepted a plea deal. 20 years for 2 murders and 3 decades of poisoning her husband. She's not contesting anything, I told Jasper. Good. His voice was firm. Some truths shouldn't stay buried. We reached the pond where he'd proposed, back when our biggest worry was whether his mother would approve of my dress. I've been thinking, he said, about that genetic research project you started before all this. The one about inherited traits. I smiled despite myself. Bit close to home now. Maybe that's why it matters. He turned to face me. We're not our parents' mistakes, Marley. We're what we choose to do with the truth. And what do we choose? Instead of answering, he pulled out a small box. Not a ring this time, but a key. The old lab at the store's headquarters, he explained. We could turn it into a genetic research facility. Use our inheritance to help people understand their own stories. It wasn't forgiveness, not exactly. But maybe it was something better, a way to build something new from the ashes of our shared past. Partners, he asked. Partners, I agreed. Later that night, I found one last letter from Reggie, hidden in the will's envelope. The truth is both poison and cure, he'd written. Choose wisely which one you make it. I looked at the key in my hand, thinking about DNA and destiny, about choices and chances. Jasper and I might never fully untangle the roots of our family tree, but maybe we could grow something new, something honest, from its twisted branches. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying the past. Sometimes it's about building a future strong enough to bear its weight. I picked up my phone and called Jasper. It was time to begin again.